Good morning, fellow commission members, staff members,
Ma'am, thank you.
attorneys, and guests. The day is Friday, February the 5th, 2016, at approximately 9:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. I'm Minnie Ann Lane, your commission chairman, and I'll now call to order the meeting of the Tennessee Private Investigation and Polygraph Commission. I'd like to request that our Executive Director, Cody Vest, call the roll and verify a quorum, please.
All right, thank you. Before I do that, I want to remind everyone, this is our first meeting of the new year. We will be electing officers and adopting Robert Rules of Order after I do the roll call. I'll be turning that over to Administrative Assistant Beth Bell. David Brown,
Here.
Larry Flair,
Here, ma'am.
David Horton, Rick Jones,
Here.
Minnie Lane,
Here.
Jerry Richards,
Here.
Dr. Rich,
Here.
Alan Russo, Walt Valentine.
Here.
Let the record show that David Horton and Alan Russo are not present, but you do have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Now, the next two items, as you said, is the election of officers and the adoption of Robert's Rules and Order. And as you're saying, you want Ms. Bell to...
Administrative Assistant Beth Bell to do that.
Okay, yeah, I'll turn that over
Vote,
to
please.
you then.
I'm turning it right back over to y'all. So,
That'll work.
at this time, we're calling for nominations for commission chair. Are there additional nominations? Do I have a motion that nominations cease?
I'll make that motion.
Have a second?
Second.
That would mean Ms. Minnie Lane is your commission chair. She was elected by acclamation, correct? So we're now calling for nominations for vice chair.
Second.
So that would mean Mr. Walt Valentine is your commission vice chair. He was elected by acclamation. The next thing on the agenda is the adoption of the most recent version of Robert's Rules of Order to
I'll make
handle
a
commission
motion.
business.
I'll make a motion that we accept that.
Motion by
Second.
Commissioner Flair.
Excuse me, but everybody knows that there is a new set of Robert's Rules of Order. I didn't know if you all knew that or not. It does include what the chair can vote. All right, good.
That's second by Commissioner Valentine.
Seconded by, I've got adopt by Flair, second by Valentine, and all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Then let's say congratulations to Minnie Lane and to Walt Valentine for being our chair and vice chair. One other thing is, if your term does expire, you will serve until the governor reappoints someone. And should that, happen when we have officers, we would at that time have another vote for officers.
I'd like to take a moment to thank all of my fellow commission members. I've voted me in as chairman as many times as you have, and I'll strive to continue to do the best I can in the most professional way. Thank you again.
Wasn't broken, we didn't need to fix it.
Thank you. Okay, back to me.
Yep.
I'll ask if each commission member has received and had time to review a copy of the agenda, and if there's a motion to adopt the agenda.
So move.
Motion by Commissioner Valentine to adopt the agenda as it's presented. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Brown. Any discussion?
Is that Larry? Larry seconded
That was
it.
Larry Flair. Okay, excuse me, I'll change that. Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. If each of the commission members has reviewed the minutes of the November 6, 2015 commission meeting, then I'll ask if there's a motion to approve these minutes as they're presented.
So move.
Motion by Commissioner Valentine. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Brown.
Brown.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries.
Madam Chair, I would like to ask for a change in the agenda. Since
Okay.
we're just a little bit ahead of schedule, I would like to move the legal report to the next item. The budget review is scheduled with our Assistant Commissioner and Accounting Manager, and they won't be here till about 10 o'clock. So I'd
Okay.
like to proceed with the meeting if possible.
Then we'll move the legal report next, and that's under Exhibit A. And I'm going to respectfully request that our Assistant General Counsel Ashley Thomas handle that.
Morning. So we'll just go right into the legal report. The first case is 20150199991. This complaint opened alleging unlicensed activity by respondent. The complaint alleges that respondent engaged in unlicensed private investigations activity in violation of Tennessee Code annotated 62-26204. Respondent is alleged to have provided recovery services for unclaimed property and assets to the public. Respondent's company website purports to provide search, claim, and recovery services to individuals as well as companies and businesses. Neither the company nor the employees are licensed private investigators. Owner of respondent company states that he and a state representative met with another state agency approximately 1 year ago about becoming an official locator in Tennessee, and during that meeting, the owner stated he was informed that a private investigation license was not needed. Respondent stated that he believed that a private investigations license was not needed as the business was conducted under the exception of an employee working for an attorney. As of the date of this legal report, the qualifying agent for the company, so they got employees to take the test, and they had a qualifying agent for the company pass both exams, and the commission office was awaiting their credit references and statement of affiliates in order to fully process the application for the qualifying agent and the company. I did not make a full recommendation for violation for this case because I wanted to leave it to the commission to discuss based on the facts of the case whether or not the commission felt that there was a violation for unlicensed activity.
I can update that just a little bit. We do have the application. We're having difficulty with the QA passing the exam, but they have now got another QA who has passed the exam, and we do have all the information to go ahead and license the company once the complaint's settled. That just happened yesterday.
So they're
Question?
saying, go ahead. Go ahead.
So the company license is going to be issued?
Yes, sir, based on this complaint, yes, sir.
Do they have private investigators licensed under that
The
company?
QA is being a private investigator also.
Oh, and that's been passed?
Yes.
They're saying they met with an official, but not anybody connected with the commission, right?
That's correct. They met with a person from another state agency, not with the commission office, about whether or not they needed to be licensed. I believe they were operating under the assumption that they fell under the exception of working under an attorney. And so once they got in touch with the commission office, they were informed that they did in fact need to be licensed, and that's when they went through the process of applying.
So they were not licensed when they committed this act. So therefore, we don't have any jurisdiction over them other than to, I'm asking, I guess, a question, do we have any?
You do have the right to find that there was unlicensed activity and find that there was a violation there. You do have that jurisdiction, yes, ma'am.
This company met with a representative on the Hill and went to another state office to see if they needed a PI license. They were given erroneous information. We found out about it, and then we told the company, hey, you need to come in and see us. They did, and that's when they made application.
As a matter of curiosity, what was the other state agency?
I don't think that we really need to know who that is.
Do we know why they didn't come to the place they should have to start with?
Other than be given erroneous information from whoever they talked to at the Capitol, no.
I think it's probably the owner of this company had discussions with that state representative, and they decided to go to this state agency rather than to Commerce and Insurance.
Madam Chairman, if I may, a question. Counselor, and before you answer, I would suggest it, and I'm sure you will, are you under the impression that this was not done with malice, that this was probably done with the understanding in the moment that they found out they were improperly doing something that they tried to make it correct?
I do believe that's the case. I believe that they definitely had that discussion. They tried to go to a state agency. I think that they were operating on a mistaken assumption that they fell under the attorney exception. I don't think that they were malicious in what they were doing.
It was mistake of the head and not the heart.
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to make a motion then that we suspend this activity on the question of the license until the next meeting. And if they are licensed as both a PI and as a company, then the situation is moot.
Okay. And Commissioner Valentine, the only issue with that is the application process will not be completed until this complaint is closed. And so I would ask the commission to kind of address this in order to make a decision on the applications.
The applications are ready to be approved. Everything is ready for the company and for the private investigator. But anytime there's an open complaint, the complaint has to be satisfied before we will issue the license. So if you vote to,
So if there's a finding of a violation and there's some type of disciplinary action,
They have to satisfy.
They have to satisfy that before the application is completed.
Okay, I withdraw that motion and move that we close this case. And if they do not get a license for both the company and the PI, we will reopen it at next meeting.
Have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second it, Madam Chairman.
Second by Commissioner Flair. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, case number 2 is 2015-021-6961. This complaint opened alleging that respondent failed to notify the commission of the termination of a private investigator, PI number 5565, within 30 days of termination, in violation of Tennessee Comprehensive Rules and Regulations 1175-01-.06. The PI termination date was July 1st, 2014, and the commission office received notice of termination on July 2nd, 2015. Respondent states that PI number 5565 last worked for the company on July 1st, 2014. However, the private investigator remained affiliated with that company through the submission of the June 30th, 2015 renewal form. Respondent states that PI number 5565 had worked on an on-call basis since October 2013 due to downsizing and lack of available work. Respondent states that the private investigator could work for the company at any point through the expiration of his license, which was June 30th, 2015. It was for that reason that the respondent did not submit a termination notice until July 2nd, 2015. Based on that explanation of the PI's affiliation with that company through the expiration of his license, I said that there was no violation found, and I recommended closing this case.
Move we accept council's recommendation.
Motion by Commissioner Rich to accept council's recommendation. Is there a second?
I second it.
Second by Commissioner Richards. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Plate number 3 is 2015-022-0681. This complaint opened alleging misconduct by respondent. The complaint makes allegations that individuals unrelated to respondent company had made threats and used intimidation against complainant. Complainant filed the instant complaint against respondent and stated, quote, that she found some of the people through respondent's Facebook page. Through an affidavit, the respondent denies ever meeting complainant. Respondent also denies having provided personally or through employees investigative services for or concerning complainant or any of the parties named in the complaint. I recommended closure as there appeared to be no violation by the respondent. The respondent was named ancillary to the allegations made. Like I said in the summary, the only reference to the respondent company was that I found some people on the respondent's social media page, and so therefore they filed the complaint.
Is there a motion?
I move we accept counselor's recommendation.
Motion by Commissioner Valentine to accept the Commissioner's recommendation. Is there a second? Commissioner Jones second that motion. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries.
And I just have one case to represent to the commission. That's case number 2015-008-091. This consumer complaint alleged unlicensed activity by the respondent. At the August 2015 meeting, the commission concluded that the respondent's violations did constitute grounds for civil penalties and assessed a $1,000 civil penalty for violation of Tennessee Code annotated 6226-204A. In pursuing sending a consent order to this respondent, the legal division has been unable to locate the respondent. By way of efforts, there have been multiple attempts to reach the respondent at 3 different addresses, and all mail that we've sent has been returned. We don't believe that any further efforts would result in locating the respondent, and there's been no additional evidence of unlicensed practice by this respondent. And so, based on the fact that we cannot locate them to propose a consent order to them, I recommend, the revised recommendation is closure of this case because it seems like the unlicensed activity has stopped.
Is there a motion?
Move we accept council's recommendation.
Motion by Commissioner Brown to accept council's recommendation. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Madam Chairman.
Second by Commissioner Flair. Any discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
This will remain on record, and if whomever this respondent is or whoever this person is, if they ever apply through our agency again, it will be noted, and it would come up if there's a $1,000 fine on the books. Is that right? Or is it just, or will you be extracting the fine and it'll be done with?
Well, for recording purposes, I don't think that it would show up in the system that the commission had once fined a $1,000 civil penalty. I think if there was ever an application made by this particular respondent, that application would be evaluated. Maybe if there's recognition that there was prior activity found to be in violation, that could be something that would be brought to the commission. Because he's an unlicensed individual, there's no real way to track what's being kept and what's being done.
He's likely not going to apply anyway.
Yeah, probably not, but I was just curious. All right, thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries.
I'm amiss. I do apologize. The lady to my left here is Phyllis Patrick. She is our administrative assistant too that works with the locksmith program, but she's also going to be taking minutes for the various meetings. So I wanted her to just come down and say hello and work with Beth on the setup and do the minutes for our board meetings. So I apologize for not introducing you sooner, Phyllis.
What was the last name?
Patrick.
Patrick. Well, welcome. I believe we'll go now. Well, I want to first thank Assistant General Counsel Thomas, and then you want to go to administrative matters? So what do you want to do?
Yes, we'll move on to mine and go ahead and, because usually mine's very short anyway.
Executive Director Cody Best, please. They are exhibits B through G.
All right, thank you. We're going to do the Regulatory Board Disciplinary Action Report. We have November. Private Investigation Polygraph Commission did not have any disciplinary action that month, but you can see that we did have a little activity with our other programs. Stop me if you have any questions, please. Then we have December's disciplinary report. We had one. Failure to notify of arrest for a private investigator. Same one. It's for the company and the agent. That's why I just said one. And then we have the January report. We were a little busy there with the alarm board, as you can see. And your commission did not have any activity in that month either. All right, we'll move on to the next item, which is the monthly report, and if I'm not mistaken, Beth had already sent all this out to you. It does look a little bit different as you go into looking at the report, if you've paid that close attention to it. We are minus some numbers. We're on a new computer system, and we're still having a little difficulty getting our totals out for the number of applications and how many days they've been outstanding or whatever. But when you get some time, if you would like, you can read through this if you have not already. We didn't have any legislative contacts or industry contacts. We didn't have any media contacts. Let me get over here to the private investigation. There is a commission member vacancy, which everyone knows is Alan Russo's position, who is not with us today. He continues to serve until the governor appoints someone else, as long as Mr. Russo wishes to. You'll see that I have my monthly meetings every month with the account manager and with our assistant general counsel. We meet every day. I mean, almost every day about one of the programs, but we do have to have a formal meeting for this one. And as you can see, one of it says we don't have any complaint information because the information is not available in our new VR Core Seal RE is what we call it system, but we don't have any. You just had these presented, so what was it, 3? And 1 represent, something like that. Okay. If you don't have any questions with that, Madam Chair, I'd like to go ahead and stop mine. I believe the Assistant Commissioner's here. And let's go up to the back to the budget review. Would you?
That'll be fine.
I didn't know you saw me.
Thank you.
Morning, Commissioners. Brian McCormack, Assistant Commissioner. Good to see you all again. Bill Huddleston, who is our account manager, is passing the financials. This is as we like to do it annually, to talk about the close from the previous year, and this is the FY15 close that we're going to go over. And as we like to demonstrate it, you can see the previous 4 years worth of data. And so if it's okay, I'll just kind of give you sort of a general overview of what the financials show, and then be open for any questions. But please feel free to stop me at any point as we're going through this process. So, looking at the, does everybody have the data? Okay, looking at the payroll expenditures, they were at $96,000, and that's pretty consistent with where they've been in the last number of years. Your travel has been consistent, and really your grand total of all your expenditures is $114, which is flat compared to last year. And so pretty consistent. Your staff is keeping the expenses down and pretty consistent across your area. In terms of your administrative cost backs, those are just make sure here. Yeah, they've gone down. They went down in the past year, so that's a good thing for you all. And then your total expenditures were at $150, which was down from the previous year, and that really does reflect in your reduction of cost backs. In terms of revenue, your revenue was at licensing revenue was $202,766, and which was up from 14. When the revenue dipped in the previous year, we wanted to take a look at that and see if we had any concerns, but I think that was a positive sign that you all had an uptick in revenue this year, so doesn't appear that there's a downward trend, at least at this point. So I think that was a positive thing for your all's program. So your net revenue was at $199, and that leaves you with a fiscal year balance of $49,167, and puts you at from your prior fiscal year reserve is $322,840, took you up to $372,006, and I think you're all in a really good place. We hope to have our programs have about 2 years of operating expenses in reserve, and you're really right along in those areas. So from our perspective, your all's financial health is in a good place, and it appears the only real concern I had was the revenue dipping from last year, and it's back up. So I think you're all in really, really good shape, and so I think that's a kind of Yeah, it's good news, and I think that's a good reflection of Cody and her job leading this program from an administrative side, and obviously you're all doing a great job setting the direction on the finances. So, do you have any questions?
Coming.
Great. Well, thank you all. Appreciate it.
We're pretty easy today.
Hey, this is definitely one of the easiest ones. So thank y'all. All right. Have a good one.
Well, thank you, Commissioner McCormick
Yeah, thank
and
you, Chair.
County Manager Bill Thomas.
Just a comment, I noticed that we have the number of licensees as 1,679, and that's pretty accurate. That's a lot.
Great. Well, thank y'all.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
again. I did. That's the one, yours, I believe it was stamped.
Okay, we can continue with my portion there. Let me see what we have next.
Before you continue on that, we've noticed some new faces in the
yes.
audience. Would everybody care to stand up and introduce yourself, if you don't mind, to the commission? Just whoever wants to start. Are all of you from the Nashville area, or? Okay. Well, thank you. There's one more back there. I don't believe I recognize you. You? Oh, okay, yeah. Thank you. All right, Executive Director, if you will go ahead and continue, I'd appreciate it.
All right, thank you. Let's see, the next thing that I had was the correspondence review. It is D. It's Ham Investigations. Want you to take a look at his, I believe his CLE credits. I'll give you a moment. He does have a letter in there dated January the 13th, 2016, explaining. And we do have the certificate attached to it.
Right behind that is the examiner.
Okay, this one is just a little different. What he's asking is for his apprentice
She's a licensee now.
license, okay. I want you to accept this because we didn't have an exam in place at the time. You want to explain that?
And if you look
I'm
at
a
the
little
back
confused
page,
myself.
She passed the exam on February the
Where's
6th.
your license? Why am I bringing her?
Okay. She took this course, and again, he called during all this, and I told him that it wouldn't apply for continuing ed if she didn't have a license, but he felt like this was such a good work that they do. And she took the continuing ed days before she got her license. Cause there wasn't an exam in place it didn't even start offering the exam until December of 2013. License requirements, because had we had an exam in place, she would have. I told him to just put this in writing because it wasn't unusual. Her license expires at the end of this month, and he needs to know so he can.
He's got time to take something else.
2 weeks.
Yeah. Of course, it's online or something.
Well, this was that in-person course we had.
Is there a motion?
The, a question, the course that she took was DWI, Detection and Standardization Field Sobriety Testing.
The commission met on August the 16th, 2013.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we go ahead and accept this, for her continuing education. We didn't have a test, if I may, under discussion. I'm sorry. I make a motion that we go ahead and accept this as her continuing education.
Motion by Commissioner Flair. Is there a second?
Commissioner Jones will second it.
Mr. Jones, second. Discussion?
And let's make due to record that because we didn't have a test in place, and, I mean, let's be fair with whomever she is or he is, and that's the reason I make that motion, just under for discussion, so.
Any other discussion?
My only concern is I agree, and I'm going to vote in favor of it, but I don't want us to set a dangerous precedent. And so I think the record needs to show that the only reason this was done is because she was ready to take the test, willing to take the test, and did pass the test, but it wasn't available. So I don't want us to set a dangerous precedent here. They take the value of a sacred cow once you do something like that, but I'm going to vote in favor of the motion.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Show that I abstain.
All right, since that's passed, we'll move on
Carried.
to the next one. Is the legislative update. Do they have this on there? Did you? Okay. Yeah, it's E. Okay, this is Senate House Bill House Bill 1474. It actually is concerning motor vehicles. As introduced, it exempts motor vehicles owned or leased by licensed private investigators or private investigation companies from the current restrictions on the darkness of the window tint materials permitted for motor vehicles registered in the state. And it opened up Title 62. Well, I checked on this yesterday, and it is still moving. It is passed, and it's gone to the calendar, for the Calendar and Rules Committee. Representative Carr and Overby. I wasn't even aware that we had this on the Hill, but it's just for the tent. It's not, actually, it's for the motor V, but it did open Title 62-26. Issue for private investigators, tents on the windows. Okay, well, it's moving.
Maybe we need to follow it.
Yes, we will. All right. The next thing on the agenda is F, is the Alabama reciprocal agreement again. You should already have this also.
No, it's on there. I've had.
I said it should be on there. You want to go ahead and take this one?
Me?
You talked to Alabama?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We had sent them. At that, their statute did not afford for them to enter into a license recognition agreement. And because they haven't been licensing long enough, and their requirements are so different than ours as far as having a company license requirement, it isn't really applicable at this time. Is it messed up again? Is Dr. Rich's?
Is that a new pad?
I shoot this thing, do I have to pay for it?
Yes. Tony, have you got another one? Possibly.
Okay, got it. Thank you. He got it.
Okay.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Anyway, so about 3 weeks ago, I got a call from the Alabama board. They couldn't remember who they had talked to, but they've sent us this draft that they drafted. So in your Exhibit F is the agreement that they have sent us that they would like us to agree to, which is pages 2 and 3. And right behind that is the original license recognition agreement we sent them. And they made changes in this one that basically, any PI who's currently a resident, it doesn't even mention a company. But any licensed private investigator in Tennessee, or vice versa from Alabama, would be afforded 30 days per agency per case to come into Tennessee to work a case that originated in Alabama. It's very similar to the agreements we have with about 7 different states: Louisiana, North Carolina, Virginia, Florida, Georgia. They only allow 15 days per agency per case. So they have redrafted this, and one other thing that they have added in here is that anyone who's convicted of a felony would not be eligible, period. So Ashley has looked over this. It says all individuals exempted under this agreement have no felony conviction. All the other language is really similar to what we have in our other agreements.
What I was explaining to Beth is as far as that felony conviction term in this agreement, it would just, a person that has been licensed here that was convicted of a felony, if the commission found fit to give them a license, they cannot then go and investigate in Alabama for 30 days. They have to go through the Alabama process to become licensed to investigate there. So that term, there's nothing legally wrong with that term. If the commission just doesn't agree to it, that's a different discussion altogether. But the term is fine as a term of an agreement.
Well, my only question is Alabama going to contact me and say, well, Ms. Vest, Johnny Smith is in here, does he have any felonies?
Well,
He's
since-
a license, but did you issue it off of a felony or with the felony?
That would be a question for Alabama, how they're gonna vet that.
Well, yeah, but how they going to know if they don't contact us? It looks like it's work on our end.
Do we have any licensees that have felony convictions?
I would dare
Yes.
say yes, sir.
Probably not more than 3 or maybe 4. 3. Again, my understanding is this tells whoever it is up front, if they have a felony conviction, they're not eligible to go to Alabama. Since we don't actually, you don't file a piece of paper with our office, you don't check in with our office before you cross state lines under this agreement, I would assume that this is kind of on the honor system, and if they find out there's a felon in their state using this agreement, they're gonna pursue that, and if we find out the same thing on this end, then we're gonna pursue that as an issue. But we have not had but maybe 3 or 4 complaints in the past that even involve somebody operating in here on these license recognition agreements. So, I don't think, Ashley didn't really think, and I don't know that it's gonna be burdensome to us. If we put it in place, and it is, there's a clause in here where we can terminate it.
My only concern was if they do, Alabama finds that you have employed someone, you send them to Alabama, they find out that might be one of those had a felony, they're going to discipline what license? Or are we going to discipline our license here?
I would assume under this agreement, they only have the Tennessee license, so they would.
Right.
And the last clause in here,
Filing a
there's,
complaint saying that
So they file, okay, like she said, they're gonna file a complaint, and I would do what?
against the Tennessee license.
Because he didn't do anything wrong in Tennessee, because we gave him a license. you're just not gonna be able to send him to Alabama.
Well,
Right.
but you could also argue that that's unprofessional conduct because they're acting in violation of this agreement.
I have a question.
Company's acting in violation because they sent them in. So now I've got a complaint against the company. For
Well-
sending the felon to, we don't have that many, yes, true. I'm just trying to make sure I understand what they're saying and who's gonna be disciplined if there is a problem.
I got a question. If I got this right, a PI goes from Tennessee to Alabama, he's got 30 or she's got 30 days to be there on one particular case. If they are a convicted felon, even though they are licensed in our state, Alabama is putting them on restriction that they cannot come into their state. Okay.
Vice versa.
And vice versa. Okay. I don't know that we have, and I'm just now been made aware of, to my knowledge, that we had convicted felons that are licensed. I wasn't aware of that, but that's not anything to do with this. But would not that licensee, who has got to be affiliated with a company, be in violation if they were a convicted felon and went into Alabama, and therefore Alabama could bring them in front of their board? Because he's practicing in their state. Right. So I think what Madam Director's suggesting is that if we're flooded up here or if they're flooded down there with Tennessee investigators, are they going to be ringing your phone off the wall going, hey, is this guy a convicted felon or not? And we will not have any knowledge of that, would we not? Your board would, but this board wouldn't. I mean, your office would, but we would. Okay.
Oh,
Well, I
and
got
since
it
it's a
straight now.
licensed investigator, I wouldn't tell you anyway.
Right.
Well,
We've
the
had
other
a couple of those.
contingent on this is that Alabama doesn't require they have a company, so this is worded where any individual investigator can go back and forth across state lines if the case originated in their state of residence. It's a license recognition agreement. It's not, they don't check in with us, they don't apply for a license through us. We don't keep records on who uses these agreements.
So then it might be just a moot point, but I don't understand how Alabama's gonna check that either. What, they get a telephone call and say, Johnny Smith's out here in his car, and they find out that he's a Tennessee person, and they're gonna run their background check to see if they were a felon? I don't know how any of that works.
Got to courts when they'd find out if they were
Yeah,
going to
they're gonna
testify in
run.
court.
It seems to me like that Alabama would have a hard time disciplining a Tennessee licensee. They would refer it to us, and we would then go to the company and say, are you aware that you can't send a licensee down into Alabama that has a felony conviction?
Right, Mr. Valentine, and say what? Because he's licensed in the state of Tennessee and met our requirements, you're not gonna discipline the person or the company for sending somebody down there.
All you're gonna do
just
is-
gonna say, don't go again.
That's exactly right.
And if
Put a
you'll
warning.
look at this clause, the last clause where it says no felony, they also agree that there's an irrevocable consent that service a process and a complaint, that we have to agree to accept it here through here to process a complaint if it's filed and vice versa. So. Yes, that's the normal language we have in all of our agreements. The only real difference in this agreement and the ones we already have in
Felony.
place is it doesn't require a company and the no felony convictions.
The number of days.
Yes.
Number of days. And it sounds to me like Alabama doesn't even have the requirements that we do. We do require private investigators to be affiliated with the company.
Yeah, I think Tennessee law.
Oh, yeah, we're stricter than Alabama.
If I may, Madam Chairman, until the last 8 to 10 months, Alabama didn't even require a license to be a PI.
About a year and a half.
A year. Is it a year, year and a half?
And again, this is something our licensees have asked for repeatedly so that they can cross state lines. And again, these are very structured, so the case has to originate in your state of residence. You can't go down there and solicit business and vice versa. And if they did go to court, if the case had to originate here, I'm assuming the court would be here. So they're only down there to either interview witnesses or do surveillance.
Is there any way we can send that back and ask them to strike that?
Sure. But
Would that solve it?
It seems to me like we can approve this and it'd be all right. I move that we accept the Alabama reciprocal agreement as written.
We have a motion to accept. Is there a second? That was by
Commissioner Jones,
Commissioner
a second.
Valentine. Who seconded that?
Commissioner Jones.
Commissioner Jones. Any discussion?
I have a question. This last termination clause,
Huh?
that termination can originate within your office without the commission's approval, right?
I would imagine we would bring it to the commission before we would dissolve any reciprocal or license recognition agreement.
My reason for asking that question, we have a staff that does a wonderful job, and I don't want us to be guilty of putting more work on you. I don't know how many times the phone's going to ring. If it rings more than once, it would concern me. So that's why, can we add an amendment to this that says the board would authorize your office to terminate this if it becomes a nuisance? Would that be in order, council?
You can propose that term or clause and send it back to Alabama to see what their board would say in response to that.
Would it have to change the agreement, or would that just be a motion? It says it can be terminated. It doesn't say by who.
It says
That's why
by
I
either
asked the
party.
question.
Yeah.
See-
It says right there in section C that this agreement may be terminated by either party upon 30 days written notice.
Oh, it's in
So
there,
that
really.
takes care of that.
Yeah,
So
I know
it's in there
that,
if
but
the
my
commission wants to
question
make that
was,
motion.
can it be terminated by your office, or do we have to wait our next meeting? And that's the question I have.
They would probably want to bring it to us.
Well, I don't see how it
Who's
could
gonna
be
sign the agreement?
a nuisance if
Minnie?
we've got,
Well, that's right, it has to be
Minnie's
the
gonna
board.
sign it.
Wait just a second. Mr. Richards is speaking. Write down, Mr. Richards, please.
I'm sorry. I don't see how it could be a nuisance if we've only got 3 investigators that have felony convictions.
I don't, that's what Beth was saying. I don't know how many, in all honesty.
My opinion, anybody that's going to go into another state is going to review this agreement before they go.
It's gonna be up to the company to review it. If you're gonna send somebody down there, you're gonna have to make sure
Better
he's
know.
not a convicted felon. It falls on your company. The burden's back on you.
Right.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries.
Okay, you could probably,
You could probably make, by motion, allow the executive director to terminate the agreement if there's a finding that there's a nuisance in relation to this agreement.
It becomes a problem to this office. I move that this commission give the executive director the authority to terminate the agreement.
Second?
Motion by Dr. Rich. Who seconded that? Commissioner Valentine second that. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries.
all right, thank you. That ends my portion. Now we're going to the polygraph exam intern application. I'm gonna turn that over to Beth. She's the one that handles the polygraph. I do want to ask a question, though. Who on the commission is a polygraph person?
I am.
Okay, so you can add on the record so we can go in and discuss these polygraph, since we do have a member on the commission.
All right.
Two.
We have 2 applicants, very unusual, but we have 2 right now who have recently completed polygraph school. The first applicant is Mr. Donald Matthew Breeden. I'm not gonna pull all his personal information up. He is, with a company called Black Oak LLC. He has completed polygraph school at the American International Institute of Polygraph. His intern sponsor is, with the Knoxville Police Department, the very back page of your handout, well, somewhere in here. It's William Lynn Everett with the Knoxville Police Department. This, Mr. Breeden has submitted documentation, including his DD 214, his education professional experience, and a letter from Oak Ridge documenting his counterintelligence officer from November of 2002 until March of 2013, which certainly meets the requirements. And I put the requirements on page 2 of your handout, so you could see what was required to get a polygraph license, since we have so few. I don't see anything here that would prohibit him from serving an internship, and he's already taken and passed the actually license exam. So, at this point, I believe it's about maybe 3 years ago, the commission made a determination that they wanted to review every intern application for polygraph that comes in. They're here.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask, why. We don't bring the PIs to you, so why do we bring this polygraph to you?
I think a prior member of this commission particularly wanted that and made that motion, and it carried. We can make a motion now that it's not necessary, that it be done in-house with you all, just like the private investigation is, if this commission wishes.
Make that motion.
Okay?
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Richards and second by Dr. Rich, Commissioner Rich. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries, and that's more work for you all, or less work.
And I mean, if we had a problem and didn't think they qualified, then
You
they
would.
would definitely be presented. But anyway, as far as Mr. Breeden, does anybody have an issue with approving his intern since it is on the agenda, or do we even need to address these now?
Well, perhaps since this is on the agenda, why don't we go ahead and vote on this one?
I make a motion, we accept his credentials.
Second.
Motion to accept by Commissioner Flair, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Brown. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries to approve this.
Okay, and the next one on the agenda is David Doyle. He is an intern applicant also. He's with the Henry County Sheriff's Office. We have correspondence from the Sheriff's Department showing his criminal investigative experience from June '99. We have his college transcripts. His intern sponsor is gonna be Danny Moore. He's with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. And I didn't see anything missing in this application either as far as meeting the qualifications.
Only question I have is the Academy of Polygraph Science. I assume that's an APA-approved school?
Yes, sir. I wasn't familiar with it either.
Is there a motion?
Make a motion that we accept.
I'll second it.
Motion by Commissioner Richards to accept,
I'll
and
second.
second by Commissioner Flair. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries to accept it. Is that all you have, Beth?
It?
Okay, I guess next on the list, we have the education report. And so I'll turn right around and ask our administrative assistant, Beth Smith-Mell, if she will handle this. Now, this is an item that we all met, the education committee met in the public here prior and went over these this morning. And now we're going before the full board to get them approved. Would you please handle that?
On your continuing education, and I will put these up on the, real quick, if I can get them up. All right, so, We have, an individual submitted this that they would like, or have attended. It was the Gulf Region Advocacy Center Mitigation Boot Camp. It was held in June of 2015. It was valid for 12 hours. The recommendation this morning was to approve this to meet the continuing ed requirement. The second item we have was submitted by Mr. Scott. He would like to attend the Forensic Genealogy Institute Council for the Advancement of Forensic Genealogy. It's going to be March 10th through the 12th. The recommendation was to approve that to meet the 12-hour continuing education requirement.
How many hours was it? Didn't have any hours there. How many?
We suggested
We
12 hours.
suggested 12 in the committee this morning. That's why I left it blank.
We approved it for 12 hours.
Okay. The next item was a polygraph examiner. Mr. Hembry submitted a seminar he went to, a 24-hour seminar, February of 2014, offered by Q Verity Inc. Detection of deception, critical interviewing, red envelope live exercise, and non-coercive interrogation. The committee reviewed it this morning. We asked for Mr. Richards' input, and the recommendation was that we approve this to meet his continuing ed for his renewal.
That was a 24-hour course. Now, are we approving it for 24 hours
The
or just?
requirement for their,
That is 24.
is it, it's
It
either
is
20 or
24.
24. This will, his renewal is pending approval of this, because he expired in December. For organizations, we have a provider out of North Carolina, Mr. Rick Mullinex, who has several classes already approved. He has submitted a 12-hour course he plans to offer, how to prepare, outline, and write investigation reports for insurance companies, attorneys, civil cases, and court testimony. The recommendation was to approve that.
Move your computer up.
The Kansas Association of Licensed Investigators has again this year submitted the IMARC conference that they hosted last year. It's a 2-day conference. What you do on this is attend different portions, so their continuing ed certificate would identify how many hours they got. So we're just gonna approve the conference itself. The next item on the agenda is Leading Edge Legal Ed. It's a online course provider out of Arizona, I believe. You approved a 12-hour course she submitted at the last meeting in November. And now she has submitted two 2-hour courses, one called Rules of Service, the Sabbath Laws, and the other one is Ethics for Legal Professionals, Theory and Practice. These are both offered for 2 hours of online continuing ed. The recommendation was to approve that. William Clifton and Peggy Booth are offering 2 free seminars in March in the Knoxville area. The first one is March 23rd, and Don Moore is going to be speaking on accident reconstruction. On March 30th, they're having Bill Dean do a 3-hour session on computer forensics. The recommendation was to approve these. The Tennessee Association of Professional Process Servers is having their annual convention in March in Nashville. The recommendation was to approve that to meet 6 hours of continuing ed. And then the Tennessee Professional Investigators Association in Knoxville is offering their 2016 continuing education program on March 26th. That's a Saturday, and it's going to be offered for 6 hours, and the recommendation was to approve that.
Have a distinguished speaker at that one that's among us.
So, the recommendation was to approve all of these. Do we want to do I have a motion to approve
I make a
these?
motion that we accept all and vote on all of them at one time.
Motion by Commissioner Flair to accept them, all of them.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Brown. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
We have one other item, and I want to personally thank everybody that participated in the examination item review. Miss Minnie, Tim Mason, Mr. Duhame, Cody. The item review was conducted on 2 different 4-hour sessions that we had, via teleconference and telephone, where we reviewed problem items and either removed them or revised them. We reviewed new items on the second session that they wrote from our reference material. So we have been over the problem items. We've added some new items to the exam. Those should be in place. I'm gonna run another statistics report after they've been in place for a couple of months, maybe 3, and just see what the statistics look like now as far as what they looked like last year. But during this, I spoke to the committee this morning, and the recommendation was to grant participants in the exam item review 8 hours of continuing education for their work on the exam. We had to go back and forth and look at the reference books and look up references and look up laws and rules, and it was very comprehensive. And the recommendation was this morning to approve the attendees, participants to get 8 hours of continuing education. And we will need a motion for that.
I so move.
Motion by
Second.
Commissioner Valentine, second by Commissioner Rich. Any discussion? All in favor? Oppose? Motion carries.
That concludes the education.
On that last motion, would you show that I abstained since I was involved in it?
Madam Chair, I believe that's all that we have.
Okay.
We do
Well,
have.
thank you.
We will be adjourning, and we will be.
Wait.
One minute, I've got a
We have
couple
to
more
talk about the
things.
rule.
Yeah, got several. Have you all got something else before I go on to unfinished business and so forth?
Calls for
Oh, no, I don't.
Don't.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, next on the agenda, we have unfinished business. I'll ask if anybody has any unfinished business.
I just wanted to let the commission know that February 2nd, the electronic fingerprint rules did go into effect. And I went up to the Hill a couple weeks ago to discuss that, and there were no questions about that rule.
It went into effect February 2nd.
February 2nd.
That's great.
I have a question on
And
that.
you've got the,
Okay.
Some of the applicants and other businesses have asked me where they can go and do that. Is there a common universal list of everybody, like,
Yes, sir, it's posted on the website. They need to go to Morpho Trust, which we call L1, and they must have a location within 50 miles of every individual who wants to be fingerprinted. So they are all over this
the
state of
website?
Tennessee. It's on the website, yes,
Okay.
sir.
All
And
right.
it's
Thank
under
you.
Morpho Trust, or L1, as we refer to them as.
Thank you.
I'll ask if there's any new business. No new business? Okay,
they're
go ahead.
unfinished still.
At the last meeting, the request was made about whether or not the commission needed to draft a rule to address discretion in not allowing continuing education for courses not available to the public. In doing my research and looking at the statutes and regulations, I don't think that a new rule needs to be drafted. I think there's enough currently in effect that gives the commission that discretion to look at each course and make that decision individually. So you don't need a rule to specifically say if it's not open to the public, it's not gonna be accepted. As to those rules, I would just encourage the commission to consider the burden on licensees if you keep it, so if this person has to take a course for a private reason, whether it be employment or otherwise, and then they have to take additional courses. I would encourage the commission to consider that in determining whether or not those courses can be accepted. But my advice would also be to go to Tennessee Comprehensive Rules and Regulations. It's 1175-02-.03 subpart 1, and the evaluation should really focus on whether the proposed course contributes directly to the professional competence of the licensee rather than whether or not it's open to the public. But in short, I don't really see a need to draft a rule to specifically address that. I think there's enough discretion in the currently enacted rules that you can evaluate each course separately.
It was 1175-02-03,
.03, yes, ma'am.
subpart 1.
Subpart 1, yes, ma'am.
Madam Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
that will not have any effect on anyone that's already been approved for.
That's correct.
In other words, they were grandfathered in, if you will, right?
Right. Yeah, these rules are already in effect, and what I was looking at when I started to do my research was just trying to address the question of if there needed to be a new rule drafted, and the rules that are already in place along with the statute. I don't think that we need a new rule to give you that discretion to not approve a course or approve a course just because it's available to the public. But I just wanted to stress to the commission that the real question is whether or not it contributes to their professional competence rather than whether or not it's open to the public.
The problem we were running in is, we can take police officers, for example. Every year they have to have 30 hours or more of, I think it's 30, isn't it? 40. And that's required by their job. And so you're saying we need to look at that and see if that will apply to private investigating. A lot of it is on the arms, is firearms and so forth.
Well, I may be
Go ahead.
corrected, but you've got your firearms, domestic violence. I think there's some child abuse and some sort of defensive driving that is required by sworn law enforcement if they're CALEA certified and they're post-certified. Now, there's some departments out there that are not post-certified. I don't know of any, but there are some. But one of the things that I think it came up, there was a organization, and I know it's an international organization, and it's some of the best training in the world. But you do not have to be a police officer to be involved, but I think count attorneys, retired people of that nature can be involved and be a member of that. And like I said, it's some of the best training. But I think that's where it kind of came up, was because of the post-certification, if you will.
At one time, we were turning down anything was post because it was not open to the public. And I guess now we're going to have to they're going to have to send something in that shows each course so we can pick out enough to.
Right, and that was my point. Once that information is submitted, of course, the commission will evaluate it at that point. I think
Like we've already
making a
done that.
blanket rule that you can't do something because it's not open to the public, I think that might not set such a good precedent. It might be a little harsh and burdensome on current licensees. But if they submit that information to the commission, of course you can evaluate that and determine its relevancy.
How many active duty police officers have PI licenses? Because most departments won't allow their officers to do PI work.
I think most of the courses that we've gotten that we were concerned about are either retired who have a license now and are still eligible to
Exactly.
attend the training, or it's they're deputy sheriffs or part-time sheriffs who are allowed to go to the training and allowed to have a license.
But are those courses submitted to the commission office or to the commission for evaluation as to?
Yes. So
Right.
at that time,
we can
they
look at
would.
each-
I don't know how much
Yeah.
detail they're going into with you.
Well,
Might be
again, we
something.
generally ask for more information if all we've got is a certificate, unless it details what segments they were taught.
A lot of them don't, I'd say.
No, and those are the ones that you have questioned in the past and asked for more information, or told them we're gonna take it this year, but not 2 years from now.
Right.
So,
We can bring it, we're meeting now every other month, so if need be, we can bring these to the commission, you can review.
That takes care of a lot of the questions we were having that we were not meeting as often. Okay. All right. Did anyone sign up on the continuing education participation forum? Okay. Well, if there's no further business, you got something you'd like to say? No further business, then I'll call for a motion.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion about that?
Third.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the meeting of the Tennessee Private Investigation Polygraph Commission held on Friday, February the 5th, 2016 is adjourned at approximately 10:50 Central Standard Time.